Thank you all for coming to Djibouti, for taking the time to listen to all of us. First of all, I would like to thank our Prime Minister who opened up the session, our ministers, Mr. Hassan Mouhoumed and Madam Mariam Hamadou Ali, our ministers. And I also like to thank our chairman, Abu Bakr Umar Hadi, who pushed us to set up this conference as well. I would like to thank our partners, African Alliance, to bring all our members to see our beautiful country, Djibouti, which we hope will have also the time to come to our countryside at the same time tomorrow. So we'll also visit the infrastructures tomorrow, and then we'll take you out to see our beautiful country as well. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you had a very enjoyable stay. And I hope you the best for the rest, and inshallah until next year in what you call it? In Congo. Thank you.
Alors, comme première recommandation sur l'impact du guichet unique sur la facilitation des échanges, les performances logistiques et la croissance économique, nous avons retenu comme recommandation inciter les États à s'approprier les écosystèmes dans lesquels évoluent les guichets uniques. Comme seconde recommandation, nous avons également une recommandation sur les guichets uniques qui doivent tendre vers l'interopérabilité des systèmes en vue de faciliter le commerce transfrontalier. Concernant la session sur l'amélioration du commerce transfrontalier des pays enclavés grâce à des corridors intelligents et à la connectivité intermodale, nous avons retenu comme recommandation ce que les États veillent à la mise en place des SLA, Service Level Agreement, pour la disponibilité des données en temps réel, la mise en place des smart corridors et écologiques répondant aux standards internationaux, et également amener les guichets uniques à recueillir les données sur le temps d'attente et les goulots d'étranglement au niveau des frontières. Toujours dans cette session, nous avons la dernière recommandation qui concerne à promouvoir l'interconnectivité transfrontalière et l'interopérabilité des systèmes nationaux de guichets uniques en Afrique en vue de la mise en œuvre d'un guichet unique régional. Pour ce qui est des recommandations de la session 3, contribuer à l'efficacité des ports et à la logistique, à la facilitation des échanges, nous avons retenu une recommandation à l'endroit des parties prenantes qui consiste à amener les organismes internationaux, régionaux et les associations portuaires à jouer un rôle actif pour contribuer à renforcer le développement de la logistique intelligente et des sciences de la mer à travers le continent. Une autre recommandation consiste à accorder une grande importance au développement et à la mise en œuvre du cadre réglementaire et à également davantage œuvrer pour le renforcement des capacités sur le développement de l'intégration régionale et également partager les données dans le temps pour améliorer l'efficacité. Comme également recommandation, il s'agit également de considérer, d'avoir une considération sociale pour développer parallèlement l'évolution de la technologie. Pour ce qui est de la session 4, concernant la résilience de la chaîne d'approvisionnement en temps de crise, il s'agira pour les États d'utiliser les guichets uniques des pays pour atténuer les perturbations de la chaîne d'approvisionnement, améliorer l'efficacité et la transparence des procédures de dédouanement et de gestion des frontières, tout en réduisant les coûts et les délais pour les commerçants et renforcer la sécurité de la sûreté des flux commerciaux. Comme recommandation, toujours dans cette session, nous avons l'amélioration et la coordination et la collaboration entre les différentes agences gouvernementales et les parties prenantes impliquées dans la facilitation des échanges, tels que les douanes, les autorités portuaires, les agences sanitaires, les opérateurs de transport et de logistique et les associations faîtières. Alors, comme recommandation toujours dans cette session, Une recommandation a été faite sur l'échange de données et d'informations entre les différents pays pour favoriser l'intégration régionale et harmoniser les normes et réglementations commerciales en vue de soutenir la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange continentale. Toujours dans cette session, nous pouvons retenir une recommandation qui consiste à tirer parti des technologies numériques telles la blockchain, l'intelligence artificielle, le cloud pour améliorer la fiabilité, la traçabilité et la sécurité des données et des transactions commerciales. Toujours comme recommandation dans la même session, il s'agit de fournir aux acteurs des informations et des conseils opportuns et précis sur les procédures, les exigences et les politiques commerciales, en particulier en temps de crise, et faciliter l'accès aux services de financement du commerce et d'assurance. Pour ce qui concerne les recommandations de la session 5 sur l'avenir des guichets uniques, des systèmes de guichets uniques, technologies et tendances émergentes, une recommandation a été faite sur l'environnement réglementaire, le conservatisme et la résistance aux changements qui peuvent aujourd'hui limiter le champ potentiel des technologies. Autre recommandation, il s'agira de se concentrer sur les performances que peuvent apporter les guichets uniques et aussi impliquer davantage les travaux de normalisation d'organisations comme l'UNCFAT et les organisations qui œuvrent dans les recommandations et les standards internationaux. Pour ce qui est de la session 6, la mise en œuvre du guichet unique et les partages d'expériences, des recommandations ont été formulées à l'endroit des parties prenantes qui consistent à amener les pays à s'inspirer des expériences partagées pour qu'elles servent de feuille de route pour les nouveaux projets de guichet unique. Comme recommandation également, il consiste à travailler sur la mise à jour du cadre réglementaire afin de faire face aux défis et aux enjeux des technologies. Dernière recommandation, faire du guichet unique un levier de facilitation dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange continentale. Pour ce qui est de la session spéciale organisée le 25 sur la mise en place d'un guichet unique maritime, des recommandations ont été également formulées à l'endroit des parties prenantes qui consistent à sensibiliser les États membres sur l'Organisation maritime internationale sur l'accélération de la mise en œuvre d'un guichet unique maritime à l'échéance janvier 2024. Comme recommandation également prise lors de cette session, il s'agit de renforcer les capacités des communautés économiques régionales, renforcer aussi les capacités des ressources humaines du secteur portuaire et également renforcer et améliorer le cadre réglementaire des États afin de faciliter l'évolution. Pour ce qui concerne les recommandations de la session 7 sur les défis et tendances de la numérisation de la chaîne d'approvisionnement multimodale, il s'agira d'adopter la technologie blockchain pour améliorer la fiabilité, la traçabilité et la sécurité des données et des transactions commerciales. Comme recommandation également, utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour optimiser l'allocation des ressources, prédire et prévenir les risques potentiels et les perturbations et fournir des services personnalisés et sur mesure aux parties prenantes. Comme recommandation toujours, utiliser le cloud pour fournir des plateformes flexibles pouvant stocker et traiter de grandes quantités de données et d'informations afin de faciliter la dématérialisation des procédures de commerce extérieur. Autre recommandation également, intégrer l'Internet des objets connectés pour une surveillance optimale et un contrôle des mouvements des marchandises et des véhicules tout au long de la chaîne d'approvisionnement en vue de fournir des informations en temps réel aux parties prenantes, secteur public et privé. Autre recommandation également formulée dans cette session, il s'agit de développer et harmoniser les normes et protocoles internationaux pour faciliter l'interopérabilité des systèmes et ces plateformes impliquées dans la facilitation des échanges afin de soutenir toujours la zone de libre-échange continentale et autres initiatives. Pour ce qui est de la session 8, la dernière, les recommandations sur le renforcement et la sensibilisation des décideurs sur les questions de facilitation des échanges, en particulier celles en rapport avec les guichets uniques, a été prise. Autre recommandation, toujours dans la même session, renforcer les séminaires de sensibilisation auprès des pays membres sur les meilleures pratiques en matière d'implémentation des guichets uniques, comme le guide pratique de mise en œuvre des guichets uniques développé par l'Alliance africaine pour le commerce électronique. Autre recommandation également, mettre en œuvre un programme de capacitation à l'endroit des PME, start-up pour booster l'innovation dans la chaîne logistique sur les problématiques africaines. Dernière recommandation pour cette session, veiller à la disponibilité des données des guichets uniques membres en vue de faciliter la recherche sur le domaine du commerce électronique et transfrontalier. Voici les recommandations qui ont été prises lors des de ces 2 jours de travaux. Je vous remercie.
La 9e conférence internationale des guichets uniques a vécu. Vive la 10e conférence qui se tiendra à Pointe-Noire. Alors, merci donc à DPCS pour cette belle organisation en tout cas et ce bel accueil. Nous sommes fiers de vous en tout cas. Le guichet unique des opérations transfrontalières, donc guichet unique de la République du Congo, va reprendre le flambeau suite à DPCS. Et c'est donc ainsi que nous allons organiser la conférence des guichets uniques en mars 2024 à Pointe-Noire, en parallèle avec un forum numérique qui est très apprécié en République du Congo et à l'international. C'est un événement essentiellement consacré au numérique. Donc, les guichets uniques dépendent fortement du numérique. Nous vous recommandons donc de faire le voyage à Pointe-Noire, une ville paisible, en tout cas, qui saura vous accueillir. Donc, c'est pour 2024. Ça sera sur le thème de l'intelligence artificielle au service de la facilitation du commerce. Vous êtes donc les bienvenus et nous vous attendons à Pointe-Noire pour cela. Merci beaucoup.
The Republic of South Sudan is dependent on Port Sudan for supply or export of its oil, which constitute 80% of our economic income. So in 2012, there was some crisis, so we had to lose all the income that used to emanate from oil. And that was because we depended entirely on the port of South of Sudan to export our crude oil. Similarly, in 2013 up to 2015, we also had internal crisis, and our supply became a little bit difficult. So it's true, these shocks sometimes affects the well-being of the citizen and the entire country. So to mitigate such a scenario, we are looking forward to explore more routes and diversify our trading routes. And that's why currently the government of South Sudan is negotiating options to use the port of Djibouti for export of its oil and possibly others essential supply, so that we don't entirely depend on one port. We have been using Mombasa entirely for supply of our trading goods and services, and having options will also encourage the citizen to have stability in terms of supply. We are also looking at options of building dry ports in the country in key locations within the Republic of South Sudan. We are also encouraging investment on industrial park so that we use our local content to secure essential commodities for the consumption of our local community. By doing so, we would have mitigated the impact of supply crisis or supply in time of crisis. So thank you very much. This is what I could say.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. That's very interesting. We know that South Sudan has been facing a number of different crises, and that's on top of the global crises that we have been facing. We know that the war in Ukraine has created a lot of challenges in terms of supply chain, not only oil or natural products, but also food. I mean, grain that used to be destined for Africa has suffered quite a significant hit in terms of how it can reach the African continent, as well as the other parts of the world, products leaving Africa, reaching other parts of the world. There has been challenges. So in terms of how you are managing, you mentioned that you intend exploring other options, Port of Djibouti being one. Port of Djibouti does have the DPCS, the single window that they are currently expanding and growing. What can you do from your country's perspective, or what would help from your countries and your traders' perspectives to bring the features and facilities and services that are being provided by these single windows to the traders? How would we make it real for them?
Thank you very much once again. As I said earlier, we are exploring options, and Djibouti is one of them, to use it for supply of essential goods and commodities. And at the same time, we have long-term, short-term, and medium-term plans. In short-term plans, we will be using routes between our borders. Yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Roads and Bridges mentioned that currently there are some memorandum of understanding and agreement being discussed and eventually signed to open the routes between Djibouti, through Ethiopia, South Sudan, and then Uganda. By doing so, we would have actually used such routes for both exports and imports of essential goods into our territory. The government of South Sudan also is planning to use river routes which actually connect through all the region of South Sudan. The River Nile, actually, people don't know it. It spread all over South Sudan. And if we use it, it will actually cut the cost of transportation. It's navigable, and alongside that, we will build also dry ports to help in storing key commodities, both for import and for export, and also supply the local markets. Thank you.
Perspective. As we all know, supply chain is described as the backbone of the global economy. Globalization of the economy has resulted in an interconnected world where digital is the way to go. Physical borders are being eliminated. Countries around the world are establishing in regions, and corridors are openly used. So from my perspective, supply chain and supply chains needs to incorporate digitalization and a single window in their way to go. Supply chain leaders need to incorporate it in their road to success. If I quickly give real-life example, is coffee. How does your favorite coffee ends up on the shelves of your nearest supermarket? It takes farming, processing facilities, packaging, and distribution. This is a circulating matrix. And the forces that links it together is freight forwarding and transport. I have been an operator in the economic sector, in the freight forwarding sector and transport in Djibouti. And I must say, when COVID-19 came at our door, we were for a time resourceless. And we have learned a new way which became actually the normal way. We have had access to some platforms where we could digitally move the cargo, where we could proceed to customs clearance formalities, where we could communicate with the shipping line agencies. And single window for me would be the solution, because in the end we are using the same set of documents to make sure that the cargo moves. So single window for me should be the key to unlock the supply chain interruptions that could happen. It is for their own protection and for the protection of the civil society. We had a great support from the Djibouti Ports and Authority. They had given us access to some platforms. We could protect our teams and yet move the economy of Djibouti, which is largely based on this service of freight forwarding and logistics. If I recall, in 2020, the only authorized people to move around were port employees, customs employees. We had to still have the economy live. And our main customer, being Ethiopia, who is a landlocked country, needed our support. We couldn't just sit, and in no industry in the world you can sit and wait for the crisis to go. You need to find a way. Luckily, we are all human, we are intelligent, and finding new ways, I think, is in our DNA. So single window for me is definitely the solution, and we still have some hidden keys to unlock, hidden doors to unblock, but it's for me a new way to do things.
Your last point there, we found ourselves being very reactionary in the past, and I think these types of conferences and discussions are to move us to be more proactive. We need to plan better. We need to be in a better position to respond to these types of crises when they do occur. So I think that's a good segue into the next speaker, Mrs. Elizabeth, the chairman of EFF SAA from Ethiopia, dealing a lot with Djibouti as well. So if you can give us your views, please.
It is demand driven. It is our livelihood. It is just like a flow of water or river where it will find its level to flow. You cannot stop it. So at times of crisis, it will find its way. However, we have to be prepared, we have to be integrated and work together to keep the chains, the supply chains equally strong for a smooth flow. In this aspect, we need technology. We have to consider also the geographic connectivity, the integration, all is very relevant for us to keep the supply chain moving. Technology is the right means and the right way to go. I think taking also some of the experiences, just to inform you what happened during the crisis, the single window during the pandemic, the Ethiopian single window, as a freight forwarding association, what we have done is we pointed out all the physical point of contacts and provided to our single window, please come up with a solution to avoid physical point of contact because this supply chain cannot be stopped. So our single window came, we became all of a sudden paperless. It would have been a lot more difficult without the pandemic. In that aspect, our logistics proceeded really way further than its usual pace, and we have to be grateful for the pandemic, although we are not for the pandemic itself. In this way, it really helped us. Also, the Djibouti experience our drivers have to come to Djibouti corridor. Our paper has to move around within Djibouti. So the Djibouti corridor, like my sister said, they cannot block the corridor for us. Even if they would, I think the supply chain would follow, would find its way. But we worked together. Luckily, there was a little bit of preparedness because we were in the stream of automation, both Ethiopia and Djibouti. So without the driver going, they used to pass a lot of paperwork from office to offices. Without going out of the truck, drivers go into the port, load, everything comes into through their telephone. Automation became our next process, our next step for all of us. And besides the port, there are offices that was not integrated into the system, like the shipping offices. The single window system integrated the shipping offices also to be automated. So we used our way through the pandemic. The crisis helped us, but we need to get more prepared. I think with the pace that we have gone during the pandemic, if we had gone that way, we would have been really excelling. Anyways, we are in the right direction, but the crisis management in our corridor was a good experience that demonstrated a massive success. Thank you for Djibouti friends and also Ethiopian single window program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Elizabeth. I've conducted assessments and reviews of almost 20 single window systems across the world. And what I've been noticing in the last year or so is that a lot of the advances that were made during COVID are now being actually reversed. So a lot of the advances in terms of automation, a lot of the advances in terms of simplifying the process are now being moved back. And there's one main reason why that's happening. During COVID, we fast-tracked procedures and policies and laws that enabled us to circumvent certain requirements or regulatory requirements for us to get through those processes and to get the supply chain moving. In your experience in Ethiopia and the Djibouti corridor, have you, I suppose this question is for everybody, have you noticed that there has been a little bit of a slowing down or maybe even a reversal of some of those advances? Now that COVID is no longer, the crisis of the moment?
We are not reversing back, but we are not going with the same pace that we are going. I mean, there are some considerations that we have to make. We still believe in original bill of lading, original this, so we have to pass. During the pandemic time, we just have to deposit the original bill of lading somewhere else and can move still, the cargo can be moved. I think even in the old days, there was telex release, seaway bill, but still we believe in original submission, while the air sector is excelling in electronic documentation. But ocean documentation process is, we are still believing in original documentation. I think more, not going back, but trying to maintain what we had earlier on before, because the policy was not rectified and placed earlier. So there are a lot of things that we have to automate and together. It's Vienna Convention is saying this, so I have to follow this. So all the convention has to be also reviewed. I mean, it's not only Djibouti, Ethiopia, but all over the world. Yeah, thanks.
Simplify. During COVID and during the other crises, we find ways around issues. We find them. But for some reason, when the crisis goes away, we revert to how we used to do it. And all those other reasons why we couldn't suddenly comes up and is important again. And this is, our next speaker is talking about practical, real impacts of crises. Mr. Bessi from the World Food Program. I mean, it's one of the human rights of today, we need to get food to people when they need it, as they need it. So if you could please give us your views, Mr. Bekbesi.
Pour servir donc l'ensemble des pays donc sur tous les continents. Next. Donc ici, la caractéristique principale des activités du PAM en matière d'approvisionnement, c'est de sauver les vies. Donc, contrairement au secteur privé, où tout est focalisé sur donc le profit, etc., nous, notre objectif principal, c'est de sauver des vies et aussi de fournir des services à l'ensemble de la communauté humanitaire. Et donc ici, il y a les ONG, il y a les gouvernements, etc., et toutes les agences des Nations Unies. Et notre travail se focalise surtout sur des créneaux où le secteur privé n'est pas en mesure de répondre à la demande. Donc, compte tenu des défis liés au secteur ou bien au domaine particulier, le secteur n'est pas porteur pour donc le privé, mais il faut que ça avance pour le bien-être de nous tous. Et donc là, c'est le focus du PAM. Et puis, souvent, nos chaînes d'approvisionnement s'étendent sur plusieurs pays. Des fois, il faut traverser 2-3 pays avant d'arriver à destination. Next. Donc ici, j'ai résumé un peu les procédures à mener. Ici à Djibouti, par exemple, quand un cargo arrive. Donc, il y a 3 étapes et donc à des niveaux différents, avec des services différents. Et nous avons la chance que le guichet unique a commencé à fonctionner. Néanmoins, nous voyons ici qu'il y a quelques zones d'amélioration qu'on peut apporter parce que là déjà, il y a... Donc ces 3 aspects, peut-être que si le secteur venait à fonctionner à la vitesse maximale, on pouvait tout réduire et gagner en temps et aussi peut-être en ressources. Donc, dans la situation actuelle, pour donc finir les formalités, il faut 3 à 5 jours, ce qui est quand même très intéressant par rapport à certains pays où, sans le guichet unique, on dépense encore plus en temps et en argent. Et donc, ceci est d'autant plus important pour nous, next, dans la mesure où, comme je l'avais dit, il s'agit de sauver des vies et le temps compte, surtout en temps de crise. Quand il y a un séisme, ou bien une inondation, ou bien quand il y avait Covid, que le médicament arrive un jour après ou 2 jours après, ça peut faire des différences parce qu'il y a des gens qui sont en train de mourir, par exemple. Ou bien que la nourriture atteigne des gens. Donc, quand nous parlons de la nourriture, pas forcément le côté énergétique, mais il y a l'aspect nutritionnel. Il y a des enfants qui ont besoin de nutriments essentiels pour ne pas mourir de la malnutrition et tout. Et donc, quelques jours, même un jour de différence, ça peut avoir des impacts considérables. Et donc, les guichets uniques permettent de faciliter la communication qui, avec la technologie, donc on peut soumettre les documents en temps réel et puis suivre le dossier, s'assurer qu'on a les bonnes informations sur la réglementation. Et s'il y a des dossiers manquants rapidement, vous pouvez essayer de rajouter ce qu'il faut. Et donc, ça permet tout ceci de gagner en termes d'efficacité. Donc, il y a aussi les facilités d'approvisionnement dans la mesure où tous les différents acteurs viennent opérer sur une seule et même plateforme. Donc, ça facilite la collaboration et permet d'avancer plus facilement. Et donc, dans ce cadre aussi, les planifications sont beaucoup plus faciles et ça permet d'avancer. Donc, ceci dit, il y a différents défis qui sont particuliers au domaine humanitaire. C'est notamment les défis en termes d'infrastructures, surtout dans les pays en développement où on rencontre beaucoup de difficultés à bouger d'un point A à un point B. et aussi donc des problèmes par moment sur la route que la technologie permet aujourd'hui de suivre. Et donc, par les images satellitaires, on peut identifier les goulots d'étranglement et commencer dès donc le départ à solutionner les problèmes avant d'arriver sur les points. Et donc, nous avons beaucoup d'efforts dans ce domaine en termes d'innovation pour rendre la logistique humanitaire plus performante. Ceci dit, il y a un défi très crucial pour nous, pour les pays en développement surtout, c'est le gap technologique, c'est-à-dire que donc, les images satellitaires, souvent dans certaines zones où la connectivité n'est pas optimale, ne permettent pas de jouir de tous les bienfaits ou bien du bénéfice qu'on pourrait tirer de la situation. Et ceci montre comment, donc, ensemble avec les gouvernements, les opérateurs, nous avons encore du chemin à parcourir, travailler très étroitement, de façon à bonne collaboration pour pouvoir rendre nos chaînes logistiques plus performantes. Je vous remercie.
Had a positive experience with the Djibouti ports and the DPCSA, which is very good. You mentioned a very important point. Apart from the infrastructural issues, one of the critical elements of any single window, and we sometimes make the mistake of thinking a single window is a system. It's not a system. It's a way and a modus and a mode of operating. And the critical feature or requirement for a single window is a collaboration and bringing multiple stakeholders and parties together for a standardized process for facilitation. The system is just a tool to make that happen. Now, you mentioned that you, apart from the infrastructure issues, what would you say from your perspective as the WFP? Have you seen this collaboration amongst all the required agencies? I mean, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, Customs, the Port Authority. Have you seen this collaboration happening? And what would you advise? What would you require as a donor agency for this to be better?
Thank you, the moderator. Yes, in terms of collaboration, we do see a good level of collaboration, but the difference is that the fact that all these different systems, like the custom process, the port authority, and some of the formalities to be done at the government level, they are not fully integrated. So still, there are some gaps. Yes, we have a good level of collaboration, but still, there are areas of improvement. So currently, if I can give a particular example, for the custom clearance, the payment is not integrated to the single window. So this is handled separately. You cannot make the payment to the platform. This is for just to give an example.
Smart corridor system that we can facilitate, goods can follow across the border. We have informal trade with our neighbors. That's why we want to bring formal now, especially Kenya or East African community. And as a port, we are the starting point of any trade facilitation. That's why ports are now also being provided terminal operating system to adapt to the single window system. But if I come back to our topic today, resilience in times of crisis, I think Somalia is a case example. We have been resilient for everything, not only trade, but supply chain, but we have been resilient for everything else in Somalia for the last 30 years. In the absence of institutions, lack of institutions or the weak institutions, we have been trying to survive and thrive in this environment. And one positive aspect is that our entire economy is under the private sector. And the government provides only legislations and support. That's why we are in a better position to deal with the crisis, because traders are very smart to diversify their strategies, their partners, their suppliers. So it was not much issue when we had last 2-3 crises. It was quick to adapt to the challenge. So the traders were very quick to adapt to the challenge. And it was China, then maybe Turkey's next supplier, it was India, then again back to Emirates. So they were quicker to adapt to the situation. So that was my short remark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. You know, we all talk about resilient supply chain as a priority, but how can we build such resilience when the types of crises and the crises are growing? It's not like they're getting less. They keep getting more and they keep changing.
More every day, but they have become also unpredictable. So who's expecting the COVID-19? Nobody is expecting.
Yeah.
And how it would impact in our entire economy. But then government can provide inventory, can see can see what is available in the car, what's missing. The government can provide some support, but at the end of the day, it's the private sector to play the most critical role to make sure that they have to diversify their supply chain. Otherwise, a country can be in crisis. And when there was a crisis, Somalia was providing more trade, informal trade to East Africa. And East Africa, we have seen that we were providing a lot of goods from Somalia. And then they say, okay, why you don't join us then? So bring in. So Somalia is going to join, I think, next year to East Africa community, because there was no other option, because they say, you are already trading with us, but informal, so let's make them formal. So Somalia is joining East Africa, and now we are also having good terms with Ethiopia to build the corridor, the roads and infrastructure needed, but also we are launching next first quarter next year, or second quarter, the special economic zone, new port, new airport, industrial zone, which will be launched, and I think will be functional by 2027, both the airport and the new port, and the roads.
Sounds very positive. Sounds like there's a lot happening in Somalia. And I think in the follow-up, in the context of that and the business restructuring, how should the private sector, you mentioned private sector being the key and critical to making this change happen. How should they be changing and restructuring their business to address this, the supply chain, or address the challenges that they are facing?
Well, as I said from the beginning, the entire economy is under the private sector, including communication, electricity, water, name it, health, education, in Somalia is on the private sector hands. So they have interest to be proactive, not to, and to anticipate crisis and to have the strategy in place to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So they have the interest. If it was, on the other hand, mixed with the government, that could have been delays and problems. So because of the private sector, I think they are quick to adapt and anticipate the crisis as quick as possible as they can.
Bonjour, c'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ce matin avec vous pour un panel de très haute portée. Nous avons les représentants de plusieurs guichets uniques nationaux et des représentants également de l'industrie qui fournit des solutions de guichets uniques, de même que nous avons le plaisir d'avoir le UNCFACT, qui est une maison que j'ai assez régulièrement fréquentée et qui travaille sur le concept de guichet unique. De quoi allons-nous parler? Parce que la parole sera sous forme de discussion et peut-être que certains panélistes souhaiteront faire de brèves présentations. De l'évolution en fait des guichets uniques. Les guichets uniques sont nés dans un contexte d'émergence des technologies. On le rappelle souvent, le premier guichet unique qui a été mis en place au monde, c'est à Singapour, et c'est dans les années 88, à l'époque où c'est les technologies de l'EDI qui étaient les plus courantes. Et au fil du temps, il y a eu des évolutions technologiques, notamment avec l'Internet, dans la deuxième moitié des années 90, et cela a généré une nouvelle génération de guichets uniques. Et j'ai l'habitude de dire que Singapour a été pendant longtemps le pays le mieux classé dans l'index du Doing Business en matière de commerce transfrontalier par rapport à la performance de son guichet unique. Et si on prenait le guichet unique de Singapour en termes de solutions technologiques et qu'on le déplaçait au Sénégal, ce n'est pas pour autant que le Sénégal serait le premier pays en matière de performance du Doing Business. Et cela, c'est pour dire que le guichet unique, c'est un environnement technologique un environnement organisationnel et surtout des indicateurs de performance. La différence se fait à ce niveau. Et aujourd'hui, nous allons faire un croisement puisque nous avons à la fois des expériences nationales qui ont été construites à partir de besoins nationaux et d'expertise nationale. Nous avons également des solutions qui sont sur le marché et qui permettent à certains pays de pouvoir résoudre leurs problèmes de guichet unique. Et nous avons également la perspective plus globale à travers une institution comme le UNCFACT. Alors la question, c'est l'avenir du guichet unique parce que sur le plan technologique et sur le plan réglementaire, il y a des choses qui sont en train de se mettre en place. Technologie, on parle beaucoup de l'intelligence artificielle. Le résumé que je fais toujours en disant c'est quoi l'intelligence artificielle, c'est de dire ce n'est pas la capacité d'analyse parce que celle-là, elle existe déjà, c'est la capacité de décision. La capacité de décision qui serait déléguée à une machine. Et le guichet unique en tant que tel est une organisation qui analyse des données et qui pour permettre à des entités de prendre des décisions. Que va devenir le guichet unique à l'ère de l'intelligence artificielle? C'est une question importante, je pense que la plupart des acteurs se posent. Mais également, le défi du guichet unique, c'est sur le plan réglementaire, parce que de plus en plus, le commerce international est intégré. Et chaque fois que des guichets uniques se limiteront uniquement à traiter des opérations domestiques et être dans l'incapacité de pouvoir parvenir à ce qu'on appelle l'interopérabilité, il manquera quelque chose. Donc, je ne vais pas présenter les panélistes parce qu'ils ont été très bien introduits, mais je vais leur adresser des questions spécifiques pouvant permettre de savoir aujourd'hui comment est-ce que ces questions sont prises en charge. Alors, donc, je commencerai par notre pays hôte, Djibouti, qui a mis en place donc, un système qui est le Port Community System et qui aujourd'hui doit s'interroger sur ces questions technologiques, d'autant plus que Djibouti est à un carrefour assez stratégique en matière de logistique. Alors, ce serait bien d'avoir votre point de vue aujourd'hui sur les évolutions technologiques. Comment est-ce que vous voyez ces évolutions affecter le métier de guichet unique? Vous avez la parole.
And also the freight forwarding community at the same time. We have also able to capture the interaction between shipping agents and freight forwarders themselves, between themselves, and also transporters at the same time, in order to have a holistic view of all logistics and trade operation around the ports. So this has enabled us, I think the objective also of today is to talk about what we will be doing and how we are seeing the guichet unique du futur or the single window of the future. What features are we thinking as a single window operator in Djibouti are going to interest our users in particular in Djibouti and in the region. So as we're operating for the past few years, we're able to gather a lot of valuable data relating to trade and logistics for the past few years. And this has enabled us to develop new services, or will enable us to even develop further services at the same time. Some of the services that were not available before, like markets, logistics trend analysis, live performance analysis, what if and predictive analysis through our business intelligence module. In the future, we want to expand on that with the introduction of artificial intelligence, as mentioned by Ibrahima a couple of minutes ago. Based on the data we were able to gather from the region, from Djibouti and the region, and this will take, I think, trade and logistic performance in Djibouti and the region to the next level. To give you an example of how we are going to use, or how we are planning to use artificial intelligence to improve the operational efficiency of the ports and the logistics sector. To give you an example, as the containers are coming or being discharged from the, what you call it, vessel into the yard, and they're being stacked, through our integration with the private sector, we're able to know which or what customers will come first, basically. And this will help in the stacking of the containers ahead of time, so that the customers that are going to come first, they will have their containers on the top. And the customers that are more likely to come later on will have the containers at the bottom of the stack. So this will save huge operational costs for the ports, and this is one of the features that we are planning to develop and implement in the port community system in Djibouti.
Singapore, Mr. Guichets, as single window was born in Singapore, today what is your overview on how single window should move forward with the artificial intelligence era and any other new technology?
Thanks, moderator. Good morning, everybody. My name is Guichets, Senior Product Director in Crimson Logic. I hate the pre-sales team. So why I share this, because I want to give all the idea that I got the chance to assess to probably a lot of tenders that being called for single window. So with that involvement, actually, probably I will be able to talk a bit more. What is the technology, emerging technology that being sought after, that being requested in the tender, and probably the trend that we are seeing, how this has been evolved. Probably
so you're leaving tomorrow, right?
Try to use the word facilitation and try to give the understanding of what is facilitation. I was told by my senior, all my mentors, about it should be making an action or process easy, or if not, make it easier. If you cannot make it easy, at least make it easier from what it is now. So that is the idea of facilitation. So when we talk about trade facilitation, let's relate back to the technology that we understand. So I think the speakers in the previous sessions probably have spoke about there's an AI, there's a 5G connectivity blockchain. Maybe some of you get exposed to augmented reality, quantum computing. Are those really relevant to us? My view is not. Let's see what are the relevant solution or technology that can be related to trade facilitation. Looking at the trend, I would say the AI use case getting more and more. It is at the initial stage that try to weave in all the AI. We have seen all the tenders in the recent days, all the governments or all the projects that they wanted to have this. So it's a sign that this continue to grow and what it will help. You need to address the real pain point. Do not just deploy your data scientists to a data or AI project. It will be a situation that we have been hearing. There's an analysis of fire trucks cause the fire, because the data scientists will notice that all the fire trucks around the fire area. Without domain experts, this will be the outcome. So while we're having this uptick trend of the AI, be mindful of that. Blockchain. I do see a lot of requests, but slowly I see them going away as well. Another way. But in my involvement, there are two key projects that we have seen blockchain that considered successfully implemented. One is the GSBN, Global Shipping Business Network, that they have done the blockchain in terms of their cargo release from the port. So this is the project that happening between the Global Business Shipping Network that among the members. So that is something that we can consider to refer to. All this trail of the cargo release, container release from the port is actually being blockchain. And they have extended this into a POC soon to be released out for the trade declaration that via the same GSBN network as well. So this is the so-called blockchain use case that previously we probably hear some failures, but there are some other network that able to command some attraction. IoT. I think IoT has been in the industry for many, many years. I have done my quick Google search. I try not to rely on ChatGPT because ChatGPT told me cannot give me the latest stats. I try to Google. The cost of IoT has gone down at least 1/3 from 10 years ago. However, the use of IoT is still way below the initial forecast. So that is something that very puzzling. But is that a very successful IoT use case? There are many. Maybe I'll just pick one example so you can also take it as reference. Hopefully this is something that you can also consider implementing. It's the eSeal project that has been implemented in the Philippines. So they have done this eSeal that they seal the container, and then supposedly the container should reach the destination and have the custom officer to be on site and to disarm the eSeal. That project sounds wonderful, but it comes to a situation that consider a small failure or small hiccup because there's a problem of the custom officer to be there on time. So there's a delaying in terms of the disarming. While we have the nice technology, we have IoT, but the process is actually affecting the use of the technology that helping to gain productivity. Rather, they impose additional waiting time. So the project evolved into, now they are turning this into remote disarming. So remote disarming come into maybe a more complex logic that probably they will disarm when cargo enter into a geofence area, the IoT will be disarmed. It relax or free up the custom officer that need to be on site physically. So this is something that I want to share with all, that this is the trend, this is the technology. I think in the earlier panel session, they also, I think the moderator spoke about the process must be in place. Technology is just the tool that we leverage on to make our process efficient. So my call to action to all, really, be pragmatic in your implementation of solution. Don't fall into the tech hypes. There's a lot of pitfalls, but I think collectively, as the evangelists or single window enthusiasts, we believe we can come out something that benefit the industry. Thank you, moderator.